Hey there, guys. This is Cole. Welcome back to another movie review. As promised, I am continuing on with the Toy Story series of movie reviews, and today's movie I'm going to be reviewing is the 2010 animated sequel, Toy Story 3, directed by Lee Unkrich. When it comes to the Toy Story movies, yeah, this is a really good sequel. Now, to be perfectly honest, like, the first three Toy Story movies are really good, but to be honest, like, I often go back and forth as to which my favorite Toy Story movie is, I often debate, do I like the first movie better or the third movie better? Because I think they're both as equally good, but for different reasons, although 2 is really good as well. But anyways, what is the plot of this movie? Well, the plot of this movie is as follows. With their beloved Andy preparing to leave for college, Woody, voiced by Tom Hanks, Buzz Lightyear, voiced by Tim Allen, and Jesse, voiced by John Cusack, and the rest of the toys find themselves headed for the attic, but mistakenly wind up on the curb with the trash. Woody's quick thinking saves the game. All but Woody end up being donated to a daycare center. Unfortunately, the uncontrollable kids do not play nice, and the gang must make plans for a great escape. So that's basically the plot synopsis to the movie. And how was this movie received? Well, when this movie was released on June 18th of 2010, the movie received phenomenal reviews by critics and audiences and was a big hit at the box office, making $1.06 billion worldwide. And it was the first movie in the Toy Story franchise to hit that milestone. And critics and audiences, they praised the movie for its story. They praised the movie for its story and how it wrapped up Andy's story. And so yeah, and then unfortunately we got a fourth movie which I have not yet seen, but in my opinion, I personally think Toy Story should have ended with this because I think this was a nice way to wrap up the story, but I'm going to be reviewing 4 soon because if I review one movie in a series, I might as well review them all. So, but I mean, hey, like I said, I got this 4 movie collection for only $20 at Walmart. And I got this because I had the first 2 movies, but I didn't have the third movie on DVD, which I like. So, yeah. And also my copies of the first 2 movies were worn out anyway, so I figured it was time for an update. But without further ado, but before we get into my review, another thing I will say with this movie, like all the other Toy Story movies, this movie's got a really good cast. You got Tom Hanks as Woody, you got Tim Allen as Buzz Lightyear, you got Joanne Cusack as Jessie, you got Don Rickles as Mr. Potato Head, you got Blake Clark as Slinky Dog, you got Jeff Garlin as Buttercup, the unicorn toy, you got John Morris, of course, as Andy. You got Timothy Dalton as Mr. Prickle Pants. You got Estelle Harris as Mrs. Potato Head. You got Wallace Shawn as Rex. You got Christine Shao as Trixie. You got Michael Keaton as Ken. You got Jodie Benson as Barbie. John Saigan as Twitch. You got Teddy Newton as the Chatter Telephone. You got Ned Bentley as Lotso Hugging Bear. You got But Lucky as Chuckles. You got Whoopi Goldberg as Stretch and Emily Hahn as Bonnie Anderson. So this movie's got a really stacked cast, and I think all the actors do a good job with their voice performances in the movie. But without further ado, let's get into my review. So the movie starts off and I really like the opening to this movie I really like the opening to this movie where basically the logo Toy Story comes up, and then there's like a hot iron that burns the logo on the screen that says Toy Story 3, and then we cut to a scene where now this is all in Andy's imagination, which we do not know right away, but we find out rather quick. But there's the whole scene where Mr. Potato Head and his wife, Mrs. Potato Head, are basically robbers on a train, and Woody has to stop both of them. But of course, Mr. Potato Head blows up the bridge with TNT, and Woody is on the train, And then, of course, there's the whole action scene where Woody is trying to stop Mr. Potato Head and Mrs. Potato Head, and, Woody falls off the train and the train goes off the tracks, but Buzz Lightyear is able to save it by flying and holding the train. He says, to infinity and beyond and stuff like that. And then I like the part when Woody says to him, when Buzz says, glad I was able to catch the train. And then Woody says, now we're talking. And then, of course, there's the whole scene where Mr. Potato Head and Mrs. Potato Head say, too bad for you, I got my Slinky dog with a force field. And then, of course, there's the whole scene where Woody says, well, luckily, I brought my T-Rex, my dinosaur that destroys force field dogs. And then, of course, not long after that, it's revealed that it was all in Andy's head imagination and that he was playing with the toys. And at the beginning of the movie, now this goes over the span of a couple years, but we basically see that we basically see Andy growing up through the years as a little montage at the beginning of the movie, playing with his toys, which I thought was a nice touch. And then right before we get the montage ends with our friendship will never die. Then the screen cuts to black, and then we cut to Woody, Buzz Lightyear, and all the toys, where Andy is much older now. Andy is 18, 17-ish, 18, but he's about to basically move to college and stuff like that. And of course, Andy's sister is grown up too, and the mom basically asks Andy, whatever you want to donate to college and whatever you want to put in the trash, you have to do it. And she's like, and the mom is like, okay, but whatever you don't have in the donations whatever you don't have in the boxes that go to the attic goes to the trash on Friday and stuff like that. And then, of course, there's the whole scene where Andy basically looks at the phone. Well, he basically looks at Woody and Buzz, and then, of course, there's the whole scene where Andy is we think Andy's gonna throw his toys in the trash, but he decides not to. But basically, what he does is and like I said, obviously the toys, they have to stop moving when people are around, so they don't break code. But basically, there's the whole scene where Andy puts Woody in a box that says college, and he puts all the toys in a trash bag. But Andy is gonna open up the attic door so he can bring the toys up to the attic. However, he stops what he's doing because his sister is having a hard time carrying the box, and Andy helps. And then, of course, there's the whole scene where Andy's mom comes across the trash bag and thinks that it's trash, so she brings it out. She basically brings it out to the mailbox close to the side of the road of where the garbage truck picks up the garbage. And of course, there's the whole scene where the toys basically have to get rid of the trash and stuff. Basically have to get out the trash bag so they don't get thrown away. And then Woody goes to rescue them, but he thinks that the toys, he thinks that he's too late. But then we see that the toys actually survived and that they went under a recycling, basically went under a recycling lid, and then, basically to crawl away. And then, of course, there's the whole scene where the toys go inside of the van, with the van door open, basically go inside a box of where, toys can be, where toys are meant to go. Basically, because toys are supposed to be donated to Sunnyside Daycare, which is a daycare center which plays a major role into the movie, and Woody and Buzz and all the toys get in the box. Then they go to daycare, and the first day they get there, once all the kids are done with recess. And what I like about this movie is how there's different sides of the building, which I think is rather cool. And early on in the movie, we are introduced to a character by the name of Lotso Hugging Bear, who is voiced by Ned Beatty, and I thought that the actor who voiced him gave a really good performance in the movie. And Lotso Hugging Bear, he seems rather nice at the beginning of the movie, and there's the whole scene where Woody says that Andy threw us out, and he doesn't want it. However, before Woody and the gang go to basically go to this daycare center, because the toys believe that Andy threw the toys out, but was going to throw the toys out, but Woody tries to explain to toys that that's not what was going to happen, and that's what it looked like, that it was a big misunderstanding, but the toys won't believe him. And then, of course, Lotso Hugging Bear says to, he says, oh, look, guys, we got new friends and stuff like that, and then Woody makes a point of, like, he basically makes a point of, like, will the kids get tired of us eventually and stop playing with us? But Lotso Hugging Bear then says, well, you're never going to die out, because even when kids move out of this daycare center, new kids will come in and you'll have new players and stuff like that. And Lotso Hugging Bear makes it seem like that this is supposed to be, like, makes it seem like the daycare is the greatest thing ever. However, Woody decides that he's going to try to go home to Andy. However, when Woody tries to escape, which we will get to that in a little bit, when Woody basically tries to escape the daycare center, it doesn't go wrong, and Bonnie finds the toy outside, and she brings it home, which Bonnie does play a part in the movie, which is a little kid at the daycare center, but we'll get to that. Throughout the night, basically the toys find out that, during the daytime, the toys basically find out that, that this daycare center was not all that Lotso made it out to be, because the kids that play with the toys, like, they're very aggressive, like there's one, there's one kid that's, there's a kid that, throws Mr. Potato Head, knocking all his parts off, basically rips the tail off Rex, just absolute chaos, not the way any toy should be treated, but, yeah. So then, later that night, Buzz Lightyear and all the other guys basically try to escape, and then, of course, there's the whole part where Mrs. Potato Head basically gets a vision with her eye that, basically gets a psychic vision with her eye that, Andy really was trying to put the toys in the attic and he can't find the toys. And so then she was like, wait a minute, Woody was telling the truth. And then, and they're like, we feel bad, we didn't believe him and stuff like that. So Buzz Lightyear, because at the top of the door, every night that the teachers lock the doors to the classrooms, there's like a small little open up window at the top of it, and Buzz Lightyear is able to get on top of it with a string tied to him, but he notices that, Buzz Lightyear, he starts to get the vibe that, something is wrong with this place, that, something, he gets the idea that something just doesn't add up about the daycare center. So there's the whole scene where Buzz Lightyear, he sneaks into a vending machine, basically to the top, but hiding from Ken, voiced by Michael Keaton, and where some of the other toys are, basically finds out that something is not right, and then the baby doll, Daisy, basically throws Buzz onto the table, and the toys, basically find Buzz. They're like, well, look who decided to show up, and they eventually, and, then, of course, there's the whole scene where Buzz Lightyear, he's being tortured for information inside the chair that he's tied to, but then Lotso says, wait a minute, that's not how we treat our guests, let him go. And Buzz Lightyear basically asks Lotso, hey, could I move to this different room with you? He's like, sure. And then, he seems nice at first, but then Buzz Lightyear says, wait a minute, I need to bring my friends. And then Lotso basically says to him, well, hold up a second. Those kids on the other side of the daycare, they need some toys to play with and stuff like that. And he says, I'm sorry, but I get you're a family man and all, but you gotta leave them behind. You're the only one who can come over here. And then Buzz Lightyear says, I guess that kind of makes sense, but I still have to decline. And then Lotso says, oh, I see. But then we start to see that Lotso is not the nice guy that he seemed like he was. And then Lotso Hugging Bear puts Buzz Lightyear in the chair and basically gets a bookworm to basically toss him an instruction manual on, how the batteries inside Buzz Lightyear work and stuff like that. And there's two modes on Buzz Lightyear. there is a demo mode and play mode, and Buzz is on play mode. However, Lotso ends up switching him to demo mode, which when that happens, it basically makes Buzz Lightyear, who was a hero, turns him from a good guy into a bad guy working for Lotso when he basically traps the toys. So the toys have to figure out what's going on with Buzz Lightyear and stuff like that. And later that night, when Woody is at Bonnie's house, he meets a few people. He meets Mr. Prickly Pants, the toy voiced by Timothy Dalton. He meets Trixie, the Triceratops toy voiced by Kristen Skull, and of course the unicorn toy named Buttercup, voiced by Jeff Garlin. And basically, Woody basically tells the toys that I basically got to get home, and Woody basically tells Bonnie's toys that he got separated from his owner, and like it was all a big accident and stuff like that. He accidentally got left behind, and like he needs to get back to his owner. So the toys, basically find Woody's address on the computer and stuff like that. And when this is going on, Mr. Prickly Pants says, he basically says something bad about Lotso the Hugging Bear, and then Woody basically says, wait a minute, Lotso? And then Woody's like, wait a minute, isn't Lotso good? Because Woody basically tells the toy that he escaped the daycare center. And then this is where we get the tragic backstory to our villain, named Lotso Hugging Bear, where many years ago there was a girl by the name of Daisy who basically played with the toy Lotso Hugging Bear, the baby Daisy, and Mr. Chuckles, and a clown toy named Chuckles. And Chuckles, while this is going on, Chuckles is basically the one that gives the backstory on what happened to Lotso, and he basically explains to Woody that Daisy accidentally fell asleep and left the toys behind. But by the time that Lotso Hugging Bear got back to the house, it was too late because this Daisy character basically got another toy of Lotso, and then basically Chuckles narrates, but then at that moment something inside him snapped. And then of course we see the whole flashback where we fully see Lotso Hugging Bear as a villain, and he says, she replaced all of us. And he was like, wait a minute, no, she just replaced you. And then Daisy, the baby's crying, the baby toy's crying. And then there's the really dark part where Lotso says, she don't love you no more, now come on, and dragging the toy away. Again, very dark, tragic scene, especially for a G-rated movie. Then of course there's the whole scene where Lotso Hugging Bear, but then Mr. Chuckles, and then the clown squeaking toy, Chuckles basically explains that, and then they found Sunny Dayside Care, and he basically gives the backstory to Woody that it's a very heavily guarded type of place and stuff like that. So then Woody decides he needs to go rescue his toy gang, but then of course there's the whole scene where now, I forget the name of these toys, so if any of you guys know what it is, correct me down below in the comment section, but there's like these toys that, is meant for preschoolers, but I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about, but it's the telephone that has a face and it has wheels on it. Again, I'm sure you guys know what the brand is, but Woody basically talks to one of those when he's hiding out of sight from the preschoolers playing with the toys, and Woody basically says he has to rescue his friends and escape the place, but the telephone says to Woody there is a way possible to escape, but it's not going to be easy because it's a very heavily guarded place, and he basically tells Woody the one thing you have to worry about is the monkey, because there's basically like this toy monkey that has like these metal clappers, and basically the monkey is basically the eyes to everything, because the monkey basically watches toys trying to escape on security cameras, and like its eyes are locked on. So the only way Woody would be able to escape, he would have to take out the monkey. And so then of course there's the whole scene where Woody, Jesse, and all the toys are trying to fix Buzz Lightyear so he's no longer evil. They basically switch his demo mode to play mode, but Rex accidentally puts his finger inside the hole on Buzz Lightyear's back for just a little too long, and then it switches Buzz Lightyear's mode to Spanish, which I gotta be honest, like, the whole scene where Buzz Lightyear is talking in Spanish, like, that scene was absolutely hilarious. Then, of course, there's the whole scene where Woody, Buzz, and all the toys successfully manage to escape the garden playground, but they decide to go down a garbage chute, which leads to a dumpster, but they're able to stop going in a dumpster because luckily it's not one of those where it just slants down like this. Like, it does slant down like this, but then it stops, and then after, the garbage chute, like, there is about 2 feet of just flat surface right next to it. So the toys are fine once they're down there and stuff like that. And another thing I do like about this movie, again, it's got a good voice cast. Now, I'm not a big Barbie person. Barbie's just a brand that doesn't appeal to me, but I will say I thought that the actress who voiced her, Jodie Benson, did a good job, and then of course there is Ken, voiced by Michael Keaton, who works for these evil toys. And so Barbie basically tricks Ken into saying that she wants to be with him, but then when no one's looking, Barbie tortures Ken for information, and then he basically tells Barbie that, they switched it to demo, which is how Barbie is able to wear an astronaut suit to basically trick Bookworm to basically get them to fix Buzz Lightyear. But anyways, getting back to what I was saying, of course, there's the whole scene where it seems like the toys are safe, but then there's the whole scene where Lotso Hugging Bear shows up. Same with the baby Daisy and the baby doll Daisy, Ken and, Barbie and stuff like that. And then, of course, there's the whole scenes where, and then basically, Lotso Hugging Bear says a garbage truck is coming, so why don't you come back to the daycare with us? But then Jessie starts speaking facts. Like, she literally says to Lotso Hugging Bear, "You are a liar and a bully, and this is not a home, it's a prison," and stuff like that. And then, of course, Woody of all people, and then, of course, there's the whole scene where Lotso Hugging Bear basically and Woody says, "What about Daisy?" And then Lotso Hugging Bear says, "I don't know what you're talking about." And then Woody says, "Didn't Daisy used to play with you?" And then he was like, "Yes," and then she replaced us. And then Woody says to him, "No." And then Woody says to him, "No, she only replaced you, and you have been lying to Daisy for all these years." And then Daisy looks at the name tag and starts crying. And then, of course, there's the part where Lotso's mean and he knocks the tag that says Daisy out of the baby's hand, and he yells, "Stop being such a baby." And he, like, crushes Daisy's name tag, the little name tag that was sewn onto the doll. And, like, showing that this guy is completely irredeemable as a villain. Then, of course, there's the whole scene where Jessie, Buzz, and all the toys, Jessie, Buzz, and all the toys manage to get to safety on the other side, but but one of my favorite parts of the movie is when Lotso Hugging Bear tries to throw in the Daisy doll, but she's not going to have any of that, and then she picks up Lotso Hugging Bear, and then she just slams him into the garbage, and then slams the lid on him. I thought that scene was funny. And then, of course, there's the whole scene where Jessie and Buzz and all the toys are trying to escape to the other side, and it's working at first, but basically one of the alien toys gets stuck, so Woody's able to free them. And before Woody can run away, Lotso Hugging Bear drags him into the garbage, slamming the lid down. So then the toys decide they have to get on top of this garbage lid. That way, basically this trash, that way they can go inside the garbage truck and save Woody, which is working at first until the garbage truck dumps them into the dumpster, basically the moving compactor. And there's the whole scene where Woody and all the toys, they basically see, like, there's this metal that basically shreds up garbage, so the toys survive. They basically have to grab a piece of metal that attaches to the ceiling, because the way this works is that metal will basically attach to the ceiling because of that electromagnetic field. So Woody and all the toys grab a hold of it and they get to safety. Then, of course, there's the whole scene where all the toys, the toys, they all think they're safe. And then Rex is like, I see daylight. And then Woody's like, wait a minute, I don't think that's daylight. And then the camera zooms in. And then we see that it's not daylight. It is a garbage incinerator, which melts garbage. So the toys obviously freak out and they start running away. And then Lotso Hugging Bear, just when it seems like he's no longer evil, when it seems like he hasn't changed a heart, he basically, says, hey, this ladder over here. And he says, I need help getting up. So then Woody decides to help him up. That way, Lotso Hugging Bear, because they want him to push the emergency stop. That way it stops moving. And then Woody says, what are you doing? Push the button. And then Lotso is full evil villain. And he says, where's your kid now, Sheriff? And then Woody and, all the toys fall into the pit that's slowly going down to the incinerator. And then, of course, there's the whole scene where the toys are trying to climb up, but it's just not working. And then, of course, there's the whole scene where Jesse says, Buzz, what do we do? And all the toys are holding their hands together, closing their eyes, expecting them to burn. But then the aliens basically manage to rescue them with a claw to like a forklift. And they say the claw, and then they pull the toys out, get them to safety. And then, of course, at the end of the movie, all the toys manage to arrive home in the attic, and Andy decides that he's going to donate the toys. And the movie ends where Andy decides to go to Bonnie, the little girl Bonnie, her mother's house, so he can, deliver the toys to Bonnie's mother and, Bonnie. And then, of course, there's the whole scene where he's basically he says to Bonnie, listen, these toys are important to me. I want to know if you can take really good care of them for me. And then, of course, once Andy is done introducing all the toys, he notices Woody's in the box. He's like, Woody, well, what is Woody doing in here? And then Bonnie is about to grab him, and Andy stops. But then Andy says to her, Woody's always been important for me. He's been my pal since I can remember. Do you think you can take good care of him for me? And Bonnie says yes. And then, of course, the movie ends on a happy but emotional note where Andy gives all his toys away to Bonnie. And then the movie ends where Woody and all the toys, once Bonnie goes inside for lunch, the toys all stare at Andy's car, as like a look of, basically looking at the car, basically like they're with emotion, but also them looking at the car, smiling, saying, well, so long, partner, and stuff like that. And that's how the movie ends. So yeah, at the end of the day, Toy Story 3 is a really good sequel. I think it should have been the finale because it wrapped up the story perfectly. But again, I haven't seen Toy Story 4 yet, so we'll see how that turns out. But yeah, anyways, guys, this was Cole. That was my review of Toy Story 3, and I'm going to give this movie a full-blown 10 out of 10. I don't have any problems with this movie. So yeah, next up we'll be covering 4, and I'm going to go now because I have to eat lunch. I haven't eaten yet, and yeah, we'll talk to you guys real soon. Bye-bye now.